Welcome. I'm Martha Malinsky. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Colleges of the Sisters of St. Joseph. Thank you for joining us today in this Infusing the Charism into the Curriculum panel. This week, many of our campuses are celebrating CSSJ Mission and Heritage Weeks, and I can think of no better way than kicking off this week with this esteemed panel and all of you. Our charism of the Sisters of St. Joseph is certainly what makes our campuses unique. It's also what ties us together as campuses founded by the Sisters of St. Joseph. It is the groundwork that laid our institutions, arising from the desire to meet the needs of the time. And now more than ever, our charism, I believe, is needed. Today, you will hear from three panelists. First, you will hear from Sister Carol Allan, Special Assistant to the President for Mission and Charism, with providing an overview on the charism. Then two faculty members will share about their work in the classroom and within the curriculum. You'll hear from Dr. Jennifer Krusinger, Associate Professor and Co-Director of the First Year Experience and Director of the Writing Program from Regis College. And then Tom Petriano, Professor and Chair of Religious Studies at St. Joseph's University. After these short presentations, we will open it up for conversation and engagement. Our hour together will certainly probably go very fast. And before I turn it over to the panelists, I do want to thank the teaching and learning directors from our member institutions, but in particular, our teaching and learning directors at St. Joseph's University, Regis College, and Fontbonne University who planned this panel. So thank you, Lisa, Elizabeth, Christine, and Kathy. So now I'm pleased to introduce Sister Carol Allan.
Thank you, Martha, and thank you for this opportunity from this panel to invite me to share. I work at the College of Our Lady in the Elms in Chicopee, Massachusetts, just so that you have an orientation. So the charism of the Sisters of St. Joseph is a gift, and it belongs to everyone and anyone. This charism was gifted to the Sisters of St. Joseph from the founding. A Jesuit priest, Jean-Pierre Médaille, assisted the sisters in articulating their central idea into a consensus statement. This statement reads, stimulated by the Holy Spirit of love and reception to God's inspiration, the Sister of St. Joseph moves towards profound love of God and love of neighbor without distinction. She works in order to achieve unity both of neighbor and neighbor with God. All our founding institutions are based on this very premise, and all the congregations of the Sisters of St. Joseph worldwide are based on this same consensus statement. We all emanate from the same place. So what does this charism ask of us? How do we manifest this essential elements in our curricula and co-curricular activities? For your consideration, I would like to ask you to listen, reflect, and consider what these components of the charism are and how they might be incorporated into your curriculum and activities on your campus, as well as challenges they offer us in our day-to-day lives. There are several components that are present within the charism. So these are unity, neighbor, with God, and without distinction. And I'd like to flesh those out a little bit. Unity. In our work, how is unity promoted? In what we do and in what we avoid doing. In our interactions, are we promoting or maligning? How do we bring ideas together? How do we challenge one another to openly listen, to speak with integrity, to ask questions without judgment, and to be present. How do we model this for our students and for each other? It is more than just being kind. It is accepting. It is patience. It is a different direction or a different piece of advice that we may listen to or embrace. Unity here is not about uniformity. It is developing an atmosphere of readiness to exchange ideas, thoughts, reflections, and experiences. And how and where do I promote this unity of my neighbor? The next component, neighbor. Who is my neighbor? Well, a sister of St. Joseph would say anyone and everyone. Those who agree with us and those who do not. Those who like us and those who do not. Those whom we see and those who we do not see or know or may understand. A sister in my community, often during prayer, offers this. We should pray for those we love and those who we should love. Reconciliation, restoration, when possible, may be difficult, but acceptance and disagreement is possible. So who is my neighbor? With God, with the divine, with the spiritual aspect of our beings, in a country that values faith and religious traditions, less and less, how do we connect sometimes to the greater part of our very selves? How can we incorporate this aspect of the charism without offending others? I offer reflection, or as a sister of St. Joseph would say, sharing of the state of the heart. This is a particular way that the CSSJs pray and have prayed for centuries. It emanates from the Ignatian spiritual exercises, yet has its own unique form. Many of our colleges and universities have adapted this form of prayer, but we call it reflection. We've cultivated this at the Elms. When I was in campus ministry in our service programs, we incorporated and developed this method and model. We experienced the activity. We directed questions to think of the experience in light of unity, neighbor, and inclusion. We shared only what we saw, felt, and experienced, and then how it may have changed us. We talked about how it touched our hearts. This is the unity with God, uniting us spiritually with one another. If I can experience or understand something about you, share that experience or understanding, then we have a chance of feeling it deep within our hearts. Change increases unifying love. Without distinction. On hearing this, we think, oh, how we're challenged to love and accept everyone. Those who've harmed us, those who have harmed others, those who we like and those who dislike us. We probably don't start right there with those descriptions. We often think of race, ethnicity, gender, different abilities, and the like. But the ones we often hear about in the news and in our own conversations. yet without distinction asks us to reflect beyond the obvious to the more challenging, sometimes to the unheard of, the unthinkable, maybe the impossible. Unity, reconciliation, forgiveness, not forgetting, without distinction. This charism asks us to embrace one another from one heart to another. The charism dictates to us what we do, how we do it, when we do it. It permeates all our activities, encounters, meetings, lessons, listening, performances, projects. It leads us in ways that challenges us to serve all people. It asks us to build community, break down barriers, to build relationships, to embrace one another. Like our first 6 sisters who circled the city of Le Puy, encountering their neighbors, addressing their needs, grounded in reflection and sharing, we too are called to embrace our neighbor, develop programs and classes that foster unity, reflection, and action without distinction. It's a clarion call to all of us who work at CSSJ colleges and universities. Our college missions derive from this very charism. When we said yes to becoming a part of our educational communities, we agreed to live this charism. It's an encounter. It lives within us. It lives within the walls, the actions, the plans, the programs, the people of our very institutions. And all are welcome to this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Carol. And I'll turn it over to Jennifer now, and then Tom, you can follow Jennifer. All right.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Sister Carol, for that beautiful grounding in the charism. I'm looking forward to this panel and the discussion, perhaps mostly to just learn what other CSJ institutions kind of also do, and to figure out, how much of this is unique to Regis and how much are we kind of sharing across our institutions. So I'll start with describing my role at Regis, because it sort of helps explain our approach to the charism. So at Regis, I teach mainly English courses, writing intensive courses, and first-year seminar. And I'm a program director, so directing our writing program, which is across the college, and co-directing our first-year experience. And so because of that, I live mostly within academic affairs. And that approach, that structure of our programs allows a curricular and a co-curricular kind of arrangement across disciplines. And I'm going to share my screen for just a moment, just to sort of help get a grounding in my conversation here. So what Sister Carol was talking about in terms of the components of the charism, emphasizing a sense of unity and relationship between neighbor with neighbor, neighbor with God, and these relationships without distinction, they resonate a lot with me, because what I'll talk about is sort of how we infuse the charism in the curriculum, but mostly my approach will be looking at how we infuse the charism across the curriculum. So Tom, who will follow me, will kind of do a deeper dive, I believe, into kind of specific courses and the work that goes into those courses. And I'll talk a little bit about that. But the idea of unity in the charism, to me, also translates to like disciplines without distinction. The way in which we sort of see different departments, different schools, the School of Business, the School of Health Sciences, the School of Arts and Sciences. How are we infusing the charism as well as sort of various outcomes across the college? And my work tends to be mostly first year kind of focused for first year undergraduate students, not entirely, but the slide I have in front of us tends to sort of showcase mostly the first year and how I'm thinking about the way in which we infuse the charism across disciplines and sort of across the first year experience. So at the top, I've got, kind of how we kick off a school year in September, and how we have a Founders Day. I'm actually curious later in discussion to learn how many other sort of CSJ schools do kind of exactly what we do in terms of kicking off the school year with a Founders Day. For us at Regis, that is a day of service where all classes are canceled, and it's highly organized. We kind of all go out into the community in different groups and serve the dear neighbor. And then we reflect on the experience as well. Our convocation, I should have added that as well, helps kick off. It's run by our Center for Ministry and Service. And so students are sort of introduced to the idea of the charism, the values of the Sisters of St. Joseph early on. And then we sort of move through the first year experience, first year seminar classes, which run in the fall, and they're taught by faculty across disciplines, but then we link to a spring course as well. So we keep these first year students all year long. And what I'm going to do is give a brief overview of the rest of this slide, and then I'll stop sharing and I'll kind of break down each of these pieces a little bit more. Our common read is another kind of vehicle for how we infuse the charism, both into individual classes as well as across the curriculum. We have classes that are taught in the writing program, classes that are first year seminar, honors classes that all partake in the common read. And our common read is always chosen based on the ways in which it connects to the charism. How do we see the values of the Sisters of St. Joseph being represented in one way or another through our common read? And students are asked to sort of read and reflect on that. Our writing program courses, which I'll talk more about, our honors program, ways in which we kind of intersect with the courses as well as the service that runs out of our honors program. Other individual classes, we have a course for the common good. We have a leadership course for students who are first generation. We have a writing in the community course, which is a kind of soup to nuts nonprofit based class. And then we finish the school year, we round it out with, this year is our inaugural college-wide symposium on social justice and community engagement. We're calling it Small Acts, Big Change. And the idea is that that college-wide symposium in April becomes a bookend to Founders Day. So if we start our year with Founders Day and this day of service and kind of anchoring ourselves in the charism and serving the dear neighbor without distinction, and then we're sort of infusing that through our courses throughout the year and designing projects in our courses that speak to the mission in some way, whether this is a biology class that's looking at different approaches to diagnosing ovarian cancer for groups of people that have been underrepresented, or another type of class, students can come together in the spring and present this work. So I'll stop sharing because that's just to sort of illustrate the idea of unity and the idea of thinking about how our disciplines and the work that we're doing in these programs and in these classes can sort of be without distinction. How do we sort of form connections across? So in first year seminar, we have certain assignments that focus on the common read, as I said, as well as what we call FYS talks, where students kind of interview each other and sort of learn more about each other and then kind of present those interviews, the idea being to sort of learn more about each other's identity. In the writing program, which picks up our common read, we spend a little bit of time doing personal narrative work. The idea there being to showcase and sort of highlight student voice and learn more about each of our stories. And then we have a writing contest that's actually associated with that, and awards where we sort of celebrate the student voice. All of these being opportunities to sort of learn from peers and from each other. The honors program picks up our common read as well. So students who are not just first year, but juniors and seniors are kind of reading the same text that our first year students are. And all of us are, as I said, sort of looking for how does this text, which changes from year to year, but how does this book sort of represent the charism, the Sisters of St. Joseph, in its text? And then lastly, as I wrap up, we have our college-wide symposium, and that is an opportunity for students to present their work and their research, as well as staff and faculty. So those of us who are out in the community serving on local school board committees or doing whatever it is that we're doing out in the community, it's a chance for all of us to come together on one day in the spring and share that work, whether it's by a poster presentation or a formal conference panel style presentation. There are art submissions. So there are paintings and sculpture and different sort of art submissions that represent these projects that have some connection to social justice and community engagement. So there are various ways in which students, staff, and faculty are all sort of submitting and presenting to this spring symposium. So hopefully what I've done was, it was a sort of more of a 30,000 foot, but kind of survey of how we try and think about the charism and the components of the charism, sort of not just in one class and those specific assignments, which we do. And that's why I'm glad Tom's here, because Tom's going to spend more time on that approach. But how do we sort of see it connecting across disciplines, programs, offices around the college, sort of reinforcing interdisciplinarity? And I will turn the time over to Tom, who's next.
Tom, you're on mute.
How's that? Better? Hello,
Better.
everybody. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Sister Carol. My role in the presentation this afternoon is to talk a little bit about a course that we designed in the Religious Studies department that very, very specifically addresses the history and the mission of the Sisters of St. Joseph. Being in the Religious Studies department lends itself, I guess, somewhat conveniently to very specifically dealing with some of the things especially Sister Carol talked about. But I've discovered in putting together the course and going through it at least one time so far, ways in which some of the content of the course can certainly be applied across disciplines at our university. So first, a little bit about the course itself, the history and mission of the Sisters of St. Joseph. It arose from an awareness of the situation that all of us are facing on our campuses, the fact that there are so few Sisters of St. Joseph on our campuses, in our faculty. I think right now it's our St. Joseph's here in Patchogue and Brooklyn. We have one sister that's full-time, maybe two that are adjuncts, and quite conceivably, most of the students will go through 4 years here without even ever meeting a Sister of St. Joseph. And that's certainly very lamentable. And it became clear to me that it was necessary to find other ways to acquaint students very directly, very concretely with the beautiful mission and charism as Sister Carol talked about it, and even meet Sisters of St. Joseph, because they won't meet them on campus here. The course was designed in such a way that they would meet them particularly at our mother house, and field experiences that would take them to different places and different ministries that the Sisters of St. Joseph are involved in. One of the challenges in designing and presenting the course was to find ways to incentivize students to take it, to make it a course that would, not only be something they would be interested in, but something that they would need and find useful. So we worked very hard to try and cross-list the course with other courses in the Common Core, so that if they take this course, it would satisfy certain core requirements. And that was one way of trying to incentivize it. I'm still working on trying to actually very much cross-list it with history, because we do a lot of history, and 2 history professors were actually guest speakers a couple of times during the semester, so that students could take it for history credit as well. So a couple of different ways in which they could take this course, and it could meet requirements for graduation core requirements. The course was very much based on field visits, especially to the Mother House in Brentwood for our Brentwood Sisters of St. Joseph. We visited the Mother House campus 5 times, and I think that was especially impressive to students meeting sisters there. They met a number of retired sisters, and one of the requirements for the course was to conduct an oral history with one of the sisters that they were paired up with, so that they had a chance to really get to know and get to meet and talk to a sister and learn the amazing story of their lives. And we all know those amazing stories, but the students don't. And this was an opportunity for them to do that one-on-one with the sisters they were paired up with. I think that might have been one of the most fruitful parts of the course. But they were also amazed to encounter all the different kinds of programs that the sisters conduct there, work with immigrants. They were amazed to find that there were several Afghan families and Ukrainian families that are utilizing the buildings there now, that are no longer used for the purposes they were originally designed for. I think this was something that was very striking to students, that there are a number of buildings on the Mother House campus. Almost every one of them is being repurposed now to meet the needs of our time. And I think that was striking and impressive for students to discover. One of the kind of models that we tried to use in this course, and that I've found lends itself to other courses, certainly religious studies courses, but I think it would lend itself to courses in the different disciplines that we represent, is sort of the model of see, judge, act. That was very much the model, I think, right, Sister Carol, that the first sisters used when they went out into the community in Le Puy to survey the needs, like to see what was going on there, how were the people living, to evaluate what they saw, and then to act on what they saw. I've used that model in a social justice course that we have here. I've encountered political science professors that actually use that model as well, to see, judge, act, to observe, to evaluate, and then to come up with a course of action. We also found that the maxims were very useful in this course, introducing the students to the maxims, spending a fair amount of time with the maxims. There are some contemporary, more recent modern translations of the maxims. I'm finding that it's useful, like for each syllabus, for different courses that I teach, to use a maxim in the syllabus so that students will become acquainted with the maxims. And I think that could be done in across disciplines as well, because so many of the maxims lend themselves to the other disciplines. We watched the film Dead Man Walking, which was specifically about a Sister of St. Joseph, but raised a number of issues that I think could be raised in several other courses: sociology, criminal justice for sure. And I guess I just might add parenthetically, just this weekend, I had a chance to watch the movie Cabrini, which just came out. I imagine it was timed for March being National Women's Month, and probably because this is the week of religious, I think it may have been time for that. If not, it was a happy coincidence, because even though it's not about Sisters of St. Joseph, it's very much about women, women's leadership, the contributions of women. Next time I teach the course, I'm definitely going to use that film, and I think it would be useful in a number of other courses as well. So those are some of the approaches that I kind of took in designing this syllabus. It was taught on both our campuses. We have two campuses, Patchogue and Brooklyn. First time around was last fall. I think in total we had 11 students that took it. I would wish for more. We're going to offer it again next fall and see if we can get more numbers. Hopefully the course got some good publicity from the students that took it. But I'm also really trying to think of, and maybe in the discussion solicit from all of you, ideas on how we could make the course available to more students, either as a one credit required course, or part of, Jennifer, somehow some aspect of it incorporated into the freshman year experience. I'm looking at ways in which we could do that to make it more available to students, so that they can discover and be amazed at the marvelous things the Sisters of St. Joseph not only have done in their history, but continue to do today. That was pretty much, a summary of the course itself. I think maybe in the discussion, I have encountered a number of ways in which the charism, the mission, is very much implicitly incorporated in ways that I don't think we all often enough realize. It is very implicitly incorporated across the life of our university. But we can maybe save that for the discussion.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Sure.
So thank you for those of you who participated in the discussion. Maybe I'll just sort of start with, we had a wonderful conversation, mixed bag of those of us in terms of our roles, from faculty to staff to students. So that was wonderful. And we kind of were wondering, I think we had more questions than answers or suggestions. But we also were wondering about sort of this potential link between the charism and leadership, potentially. If any of our panelists would be able to speak to that, or anyone else for that matter, sort of using the root of charism and charisma, and sort of understanding and thinking about charisma in this way where we're, leading and motivating others to participate in good and serve community, and wondering if there's sort of a natural link there at all. I don't know if Tom or others might be able to speak to that. And then let's just maybe sort of share our experience in the breakout rooms from there.
So I guess I'm just looking for a clarification. Is it the leadership programs that we put on for our students? Is it?
I think just in terms of the way, I think from a curriculum standpoint, we're naturally trying to provide students with experiences and teach them leadership skills, in a sense, and wondering if that in and of itself sort of lends itself to sort of this idea of charism in the classroom on some level, if there's a connection potentially there.
Well, one of the readings that I used in the course, and maybe some of you have come across it, but it's actually an article that was written by three colleagues here from St. Joseph's, two of whom are here today, Amy and Joanne. But it's an article called "Let Us Roll Up Our Sleeves." amplifying female academic leadership through collaboration and mentorship. And I thought it was a really sort of wonderful article, because they were looking at it from the lens of their own disciplines in the social sciences, and seeing the work of the sisters as sort of models of leadership. If you don't, maybe Martha, we could make that accessible if people don't know about it. It's a really well done article.
It is, and it's up on the ACSSJ's website too. I'll try to find the link here and put it into the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful article.
So Randy, that perhaps answers one of the questions we had.
I'll also just share that. So I teach, I'm at Mount St. Mary's, and I teach in our first year seminar on the spirit of the founders specifically, and it's the second half of their seminar experience. I co-teach that. It's meant to be an interdisciplinary course, and I co-teach that with our president, and her discipline, even though she's a French literature scholar, but her discipline for the course is leadership. And my discipline is the sort of theology and history of the sisters. So that is that, you know, I wouldn't say that we have come up with like a complete leadership sort of theory, but the idea, because we emphasize leadership so much in our outcomes for our graduates, we start right out with the Sisters of St. Joseph are the models of leadership that we want to emulate and instill in our students. But they get that right from the president, which can be quite powerful.
I think that's such a, oh,
You,
forgive
sorry. Mhm.
I was going to say, I really appreciate that question. It's such a great question. That's certainly behind the decision at Regis to sort of start this symposium in the spring as a way for the students as well as staff and faculty to kind of share their work, because it's a place for students to see, like, how do they connect their studies, how do they connect their projects and presentations to real world change, what, you know, and what does that look like, and then be able to kind of rub shoulders with staff and faculty who are doing things out in the community, who are serving in their towns in various ways, and staff and faculty are sharing that. So I think it's a great way for students to be able to see, what does it mean to walk the walk outside of classroom discussion.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think it's really important also. I think both you and Tom mentioned this notion of, you know, the explicit nature of what we're doing, right? So devising curricular items in very intentional ways, and knowing what we're doing can be called this, or knowing what we're doing lends itself to the history of the sisters. I think this is a very important conversation for that reason alone. Others have thoughts on the same, or want to introduce a new sort of conversation you had in your breakout room?
One of the things we talked about, sorry, my camera doesn't work, like I'm lagging for some reason on my internet. But one of the things we talked about was the intentionality. And again, I feel like we've had this conversation even at St. Joseph's, but I do a lot of the things in my class already that were talked about, you know, by all three of the presenters, but I'm not necessarily really intentional. And so, like, when Tom was talking about putting the maxims into your syllabus and being really explicit about how you're infusing the charism into your class, I teach criminal justice. So like, I teach and I administrate, I run our online programs as well. And so I'm looking at ways to infuse it, you know, within the online environment, but also within my criminal justice classes. I teach community corrections, which is all about reconciliation and restorative justice. And I teach our theory class about why people commit crimes. And so, you know, I'm constantly doing a lot of the things, but not necessarily intentional about it. And so that's one of the things we talked about, was how to be more intentional about infusing the charism into your classroom.
Yeah, not only across the classroom, but Amy, I'm reminded of 2 weeks ago when we had our university-wide meeting day. You were talking about accessibility and how you made very explicit, you know, the fact that accessibility our efforts at accessibility are fulfilling part of what the mission of the sisters is, really, in terms of our care and concern for all students, you know, and I thought that was, you know, a good example of bringing this not only to the attention of the students, but to the faculty as well. And for us to realize that, yeah, there are things maybe we already do without even realizing they are very consonant with the mission and the charism.
Yeah, and the article you mentioned, Tom, that we wrote, we went into that looking at the leadership of the sisters more so than the charism, and we came out of that really understanding better the charism and how it does affect that. That article came about because at St. Joseph's and probably at the other schools as well, we noticed there's a lot of female leadership. So even though the sisters are gone, when you look at our President's Council, for example, our vice presidents are overwhelmingly female, and a lot of the other leadership positions on campus, you know, it's female led. And so we looked at how the sisters had cultivated that and what they taught us while they were here. We were all here for several years while there were a number of sisters on campus, and how that affects the culture even moving forward, and how we can keep that, you know, among the faculty and staff as well as the students. And yeah, and so I have noticed it coming through in my work, both as an administrator, like Tom said, the accessibility, like it was just a slam dunk, like not even something to think about, because something that we should just be doing based on our mission, not because of our legal requirements necessarily or anything like that, but it's what we should be doing. And so, yeah, it has, yeah, I see it more and more. Like you said, I think we need to be more intentional about it. Even like you were saying, Tom, in talking about, you know, digital accessibility and the fact that, again, it is partially mission driven. So, yeah.
Mm.
I'm sure we're running short on time, but and if anybody has resources on assessing the mission charism in the curriculum, our faculty is looking to articulate that in a deeper way in terms of the learning outcomes. Spirit of the Founders is one of our main areas of a learning outcome, and so there's an assessment for it. But then they just said, well, what do we mean by CSJ mission? You know, so if anybody has assessment tools, I would greatly appreciate anything you're willing to share.
It's very interesting. Do you know, does anyone know? Martha, do we have?
I'm happy to pass on what Regis uses as well, because we've got a couple things like we designed a signature assignment with a rubric, and then our Center for Instructional Innovation, Diana Perdue was here earlier from Regis, helps maintain a site on our LMS that's sort of dedicated to this. So I can try and push that forward to the organizers to disseminate as you like.
Wonderful.
That's great. Well, and I am seeing that we're a minute from the end of our time together. And so I do want to thank you again for joining us today. It's been a great conversation. Thank you again to our three panelists for starting the conversation and sharing with us more about your work and how you're infusing the charism, as well as everybody for being here. And I hope that this will be the start of many conversations. So we hope to be doing more faculty and staff workshops in the future. So look forward to seeing you back at those, and reach out if there's topics that you would like to hear about, or things that we could be talking, like assessment, that we could dig deeper into as well. We don't always have to have all the answers, but we can ask the questions together and learn from each other. So thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll continue to be in touch. Thank you again. Bye-bye.